Hello and welcome to the Sage 50 Cloud Payroll webinar looking at running your payroll year end. My name is Tom, I'm one of the trainers here at Sage, and I'm joined by my colleague Duncan, and we'll be taking you through this session looking at each stage of running a successful payroll year end. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As you can see, your microphone has been muted automatically and it will remain muted for the duration of the session, but you can send us your questions as we move through. There's a little speech bubble on the right hand side of your screen with a question mark in it. Click that and you'll be able to send us your questions and receive a typed response. Please make sure you're downloading a copy of our handouts. So we've got one for useful links and also a copy of these slides. They're available by that piece of paper with the corner folded over on the right hand side. And we're going to be going through some slides and some demonstrations on this session. So if you'd like a closer look at anything that we're taking you through, click on that icon at the bottom to switch to full screen. The agenda for today's session is on screen now. Firstly, I'll be taking you through some key dates and then a checklist of the steps that you should go through to prepare for running year end. Then I'll hand over to Duncan, who'll take you through the steps for processing payroll year end, including your final submission of the tax year and a new way to produce P60s. He'll then take you through getting ready for your new tax year, including how to update your employees' tax codes and some information on employment allowance and small employers relief. And then I'll rejoin you and take you through what's new for 2021-22, including all relevant legislation changes. And just a quick reminder that you can download a copy of these slides and some useful links by clicking that handout icon on the right hand side of your screen. So we'll begin now with those key dates and the preparation checklist. You can see along the bottom of the screen that we've arranged key dates in order on a timeline. The year-end update is now available, and you should download and install that as soon as possible to ensure that your software is up to date for processing into the 2021-22 tax year and to do your payroll year-end. The end of the tax year is the 5th of April, and you can start preparing for your year-end. And the new tax year begins on the 6th of April, so that new software will have all of the relevant legislation for you to process on into the new tax year. You should process your year end with the final submission of the 2020-2021 tax year being with HMRC by the 19th of April. And then you can process into the new tax year, bearing in mind that employees must have their P60s for the 2020-2021 tax year no later than the 31st of May. And as I mentioned earlier, Duncan's going to be giving you some information about how P60s have changed in the New Year software a little bit later on in the webinar. And on screen now is our preparation checklist, so the steps you need to make sure you've gone through before running year end. Starting with installing your year-end software update, which is available now. It will increase your version number to 27.01 and includes all of the new legislation for the 2021-22 tax year. You need to make sure you've processed all relevant employee pay for the last time in the 2020-2021 tax year, and for any weekly, 2 weekly, or 4 weekly paid employees. That includes checking for a week 53 and processing that for anyone whose pay would normally fall on the 5th of April. You should process any leavers who left on or before the 5th of April and have submitted your full payment submission for the last pay period. If required, you should submit your employer payment submission for the last period if you need to let HMRC know about any difference in payment amount that you submitted on the full payment submission. And lastly, make sure that you take a backup of your Sage 50 Cloud Payroll data. I'll hand you over to Duncan in just a second to take you through processing your payroll year end, but just to let you know, if you'd like any more in-depth information about installing your software and preparing for year end, use the handout icon on the right hand side of the screen to download the useful links document, which contains a link to our webinar which takes you through that step by step. So I'll hand you across to Duncan now to take you through processing your payroll year end, and I'll speak to you again soon to take you through what's new for 2021-22.
Thanks, Tom, and hello everyone. So I'm going to take you through a demo of the payroll year end process. It is really simple, hasn't changed much from previous years. but there is a change to the way that we produce P60s, which I'm going to run through a little bit later on. Now, first thing is that you will need to be signed into Sage Payroll either as the manager username or as a user that has access to all employees. So I'm signed in as manager, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my process date, and I'm going to set this to the last day of the tax year, which is the 5th of April 2021, as this will ensure that all of the employees that I paid during the tax year appear in my employee list, and if I choose to run any reports, it will run those reports for the correct tax year. So just click an OK to that process date, and then to find the year-end options, I'll simply click on Payroll Year-End here towards the bottom left corner. So you can see these are the steps we're going to follow, working left to right. Alternatively, we could open up the Payroll Year-End wizard if we wanted to see the steps there, which we can access from the Tasks panel here on the left-hand side. But I'm going to choose my tax year. We'll just get the message asking if I'd like to clear employee selections and reset any criteria. And whenever you see this, just click yes. And that takes us into the Payroll Year-End Details screen. So a quick check here that our tax year reads 2020 to 21, and that the reports date is the last day of the year, the 5th of April. And then there's a section just underneath for a cessation date that you would only need to fill in if you're running the year-end process for a company that has ceased trading. So it doesn't apply to us. We're still trading. We're continuing into the new year. So I can leave that blank, and I'll just click OK. It'll then confirm that it's switching us to tax year 2020 to 21. And we are then ready to move on to our first step. So the first step is the internet submission, and this is where we'll make our final submission of the tax year. This submission won't contain any employee or payment values, as they've all been sent during the tax year with our FPS. It simply notifies HMRC that we've completed payroll for the current tax year. In some payroll software, you can actually mark your last FPS as a final submission, but with Sage Payroll, it is done separately as part of the year-end process. Now, you can send this whenever you're ready to, as long as you've completed your final payroll of the year, and it should be submitted no later than the 19th of April, which is the deadline for all submissions in 2020 to 21. So let's go ahead and click on Internet Submissions. And as you can see, that's taken us into the Employer Payment Summary screen. I'm going to click on to Continue. And we have here our gateway registration and company details. So I'm just going to click Submit in order to give us the important information screen. And this is where you see the indicator for final submission of the year. This is where it shows yes. And that's essentially what we're submitting to HMRC. So if I continue by clicking Submit, that will then send the data to HMRC. So as it usually does, you'll see the progress bar move across. And when it's finished, we've got confirmation here that the submission of the data was successful. And then there is a link should we wish to view and print the submission log. So that's that step complete. We've notified HMRC that that was our final submission of the tax year, and we're now ready to move on and produce our P60s. So if you don't already know, a P60 is an end-of-year summary of the payments and deductions that you've made from your employees, and you'll need to give one to any employee who is still employed by you as at the end of the tax year. If someone's left before the 5th of April, they won't get a P60 from you. Instead, they get the P45 with a record of their pay and their tax. Now this year, there are no longer any options to print onto P60 stationery, as both Sage and HMRC no longer provide those forms. So instead, you can either upload P60s to the Sage online portal, you can email them to your employees, or you have the option of printing the P60 onto plain paper. So we are going to take a look at each option. So first I'll go into Produce P60s. And you'll see the first one offered to us is uploading online P60s. And in order to do this, you do need to have set up the online services feature in your software. And you'll be integrating either with the Sage Employee Online Service or integrating with Sage HR. Now, online payslips and P60s is included with all of our payroll subscriptions. So you get this at no extra charge. Or if you're an accountant, it's included with the online bureau subscription. So if you're already uploading payslips, you've already set this up. Or if you haven't set it up yet, there's plenty of help available from our help centre. And we've got a link to that in the handout. So if I click onto upload, you can see it takes us into the upload P60 screen. So if I've got 3 employees that I've set up for this service, and I'm actually going to choose to include them all, I'm going to upload a P60 for each of them. If I'm happy with that selection, I then need to click onto upload. And we then get the message, your P60s have been successfully published. So what you can do from there is you can access your online portal, whether that's Sage HR or the Sage Employee Online Service. If necessary, you can publish the P60s, which you won't need to do with Sage HR. They are published immediately, and you'll be able to view the P60s that your employees will have access to when they sign in to view their payslips and P60s. So I'm just going to click close. And then I can tick this box to confirm that I have produced my P60s. Now I also want to show you the print and email option. So we can access this by clicking on print/email. And then we can choose from the drop-down list the appropriate option. So if we're printing the P60s, you'll no longer need any stationery, as the full P60 is now printed onto plain paper. So in the past, you may have used a test print option. It isn't really required these days. You can go straight onto the print P60s option. And if you've got anyone set up to receive documents via email or online services, you'll see this message asking if you want to include those employees. So if you want a printed P60 for all employees, you would select yes. But if you only wanted a printed copy for those that are not receiving an online or email P60, you have got the option of clicking no, and then only printing the P60s that you actually need. So in this case, I'm going to click yes, and that'll open up a preview of the P60s. This is exactly what it will look like when it prints out. I've got one for each of my current employees. There isn't one for the leaver on my payroll. And I can just go ahead and print that P60. And if I wanted my own copy, I might export the whole lot as a PDF, and I can keep that with my payroll records. So when you're finished, you can close this screen. I will just show you the email option as well. So for this, we choose email from the drop down. You've then got the email button. So as long as you've set up electronic documents for your employees, this will work in the same way as it does for payslips. So it'll generate individual emails in Microsoft Outlook. You'll find these in the drafts folder or sometimes in your inbox. They'll have the P60 attached, password protected with the password that you entered in the settings, and that can then be sent on to each individual employee. So if you want more information about setting up or using email payslips and P60s, you'll find a link to the help in the handout. So I'm just going to close out of this screen, and as I have produced the P60s that I need, I'm going to tick this box. I can then close out of the step, and I'm ready to move on, back up my data, and then complete the year-end process. So the next step, backup data, really simple. It's a good time to take a backup. It's where you've kind of finalized your payroll year end. So this just takes you into the backup wizard. So we can choose what files we'd like to back up. I'm just going to go with the ones that are pre-selected. You can then choose a path for the backup. So if you wanted to, you can change that location or even change the file name. So I'm going to call this PYE 2021. I'm then going to click Next and Finish. And as you can see, that backup has been successful. So if I do ever need to come back to this point, I've got a backup I can restore. The next step is to complete year end. This will move our process date into the new tax year, ready for when we update the employees' tax codes. And it will also remove any expired historical data older than the number of years you've specified in your company settings. So I'm just going to click Complete Year End. And to this confirmation message, I will click Yes. If you keep car records and you record employees' mileages, you can update the total miles for the tax year from the mileage log. But as I'm not using that feature, I'm just going to click No. And as you can see, it confirms tax year end clearing completed and that year-to-date values for 2020 to 21 have been archived for historical data and reporting purposes. So if I then click OK, you might have noticed that my process date shown at the bottom of the screen has moved into the new tax year, 2021 to 22. One final step in the year-end process, which is to distribute the year-end returns. And this just serves as a reminder that you should give your employees their P60s no later than the 31st of May. So that might be the uploaded copy, emailed or printed. And if you haven't already done so, make your final payment of tax and national insurance by the 19th of April deadline or 22nd of April if you pay electronically. So I can close down that final step. That is the year-end process complete. So we're now ready to move on to the new tax year. And the next thing I'll show you will be updating your employees' tax codes. I'm now going to run through the steps to get you ready for processing in the new tax year. This includes updating your employees' tax codes and, if required, submitting your employment allowance claim and setting up small employers relief. We'll start with the tax codes. Before you process payroll in the new tax year, you'll need to make changes to your employees' tax codes. You'll find full details of these changes on the P9X published by HMRC on the gov.uk website. But to summarise, from the 6th of April, all tax codes ending in L, M or N will need to be updated. Tax codes ending with L increase by 7, those ending in M increase by 8, and codes ending in N increase by 6. For example, tax code 1250L will increase to 1257L from the 6th of April. You'll also need to clear any week 1, month 1 flags at the beginning of the tax year. To make the required changes, you can use the Global Changes option in Sage Payroll, and I'll show you this in the next demo. Please note that you may also receive individual tax code changes, known as P9 notices, for some of your employees. It's best to apply these P9 notices after you do the global change, as this avoids making a global change to a tax code you'd already correctly updated. So we're rejoining the demo at the end of the payroll year-end process, and there's a couple of things I need to check before we update our employees' tax codes. So if I navigate to the payroll toolbar, first thing I'll do is I'll check my process date and make sure it is set into the new tax year. So I've got the 6th of April, tax year 2021 to 22. And the other thing I need to check is that all of my employees are shown in the employee list. So I'll just change the view to the employee list. And then if I check the criteria settings, just need to make sure that we're not excluding anyone on hold or on holiday. So we've got both of these boxes cleared. And then from this outline section, We have got the all employees folder selected, so we're picking up all the different pay frequencies, etc. So I'll show you how to check the current tax codes. We can see them here in the tax code column. I've got quite a few that are on 1250L currently. I've got a tax code that ends in M as well. I've also got a month one tax code, so that flag will need to be cleared. But I do have a few that will be unaffected by these changes, such as this BR and D0 code. So I'm going to use the global changes option to make the changes. So my first step is to select everyone. If I click clear and then swap, that will highlight everyone on my employee list. I can then go to tasks at the top of the screen and down to global changes. Then onto tax codes. And I'm going to choose this third one down, apply tax code change where code has suffix. So that takes me into the change tax code box. And we need to enter the suffix of the tax code we want to change, which will be L for the first changes we make, and the value by which the tax code is to change, which in this case is 7. And new for this tax year, the effective date of that new tax code, which will be effective from the 6th of April 2021. We can then click OK. And I've got 9 employees selected. I'll click yes to proceed. And I then have confirmation that 6 employees have had their tax code updated. And if you keep an eye on these tax codes ending in L, as soon as I click OK, you can see the number has then gone up, in this case, to 1257L. So we then repeat these steps to make the changes to the M and N tax codes. So tasks, global changes, tax codes, where code has suffix. M codes are increasing by 8, effective 6th of April 2021. And I'll click yes to proceed. And there was 1 employee with an M code, this one just here. And you can see that one's increased. And although I don't have any N codes, I'll run through the steps anyway. Tasks, global changes, tax codes, where code has suffix. And it was the N codes that are increasing by 6, effective 6th of April. So no employees updated by that change. So we just have one further global change to make, and that's to remove any remaining week 1, month 1 flags. So to do this, we go back to tasks, global changes and tax codes, and then you choose the option at the bottom, clear week 1, month 1 flag. So are we sure we want to proceed? I'm going to click yes. And we get the confirmation. A total of 9 employees were successfully updated. So we've now applied the global changes. All that remains is to apply any individual tax code notices that you may have received, any P9 notices for the new tax year. You can either get these from e-submissions by checking your IR Secure mailbox. So from here you can click check for new mail and you'll get a folder with any P9 notifications in them. They can be applied as soon as you receive them these days because they will have an effective from date of the 6th of April. Or if you still get these notifications in the post, you would need to open the record of the relevant employee and make the changes from there. Right, so let's move on now to employment allowance. If you're eligible for employment allowance, you'll need to submit your claim for the 2021 to 22 tax year. This allows you to claim up to £4,000 by reducing your employer national insurance contributions when you make payments to HMRC. You can usually claim employment allowance as a business or charity if your employer's Class 1 national insurance liabilities were less than £100,000 in the previous tax year. But if you're unsure, you can check if you're eligible on the gov.uk website. Let's have a look at how to make your claim. So we're going to start by going to the company options here on the left-hand side. Then going to go into the settings, and here on the details tab, you'll find an option to apply for EA. Now, even if you applied in the previous year, this setting is cleared at the start of a tax year, so you will need to apply for each tax year in which you're eligible. So I'll click apply for EA. And we just need to indicate whether state aid applies to this business, and in most cases it is applicable, and then choose the state aid sector that applies to you. And if it's none of the first three, you should select industrial. You then click submit, and that will then send an employer payment summary. So if I click continue, and once I've checked my details, I'll click submit. And as you can see, this EPS has the employment allowance indicator set to yes. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit this to HMRC. And when it's finished, you get confirmation that the submission has been successful. What you can then do is to select the checkbox, eligible for employment allowance. We then see a message just confirming that you'll no longer get a confirmation letter for employment allowance, but if your claim is rejected, you will get a message from HMRC. So read this information, and when you've done, click OK. And you've now set up your claim for employment allowance. Whilst we're in the company settings, the other one to point out is the eligible for small employers relief setting for 2021 to 22. This applies to you if you're claiming statutory payments such as maternity, paternity or adoption pay, and you are usually eligible for small employers relief if your total national insurance contributions, that's employers plus employees, is £45,000 or less in the tax year prior to the qualifying week. So if it does apply to you, you should ensure that you tick this box at the beginning of the tax year, and that way you will reclaim the correct percentage of these statutory payments as a small employer. For more details on small employers relief, check out the link in the handout or search our help centre. So just to recap, when getting ready for the new tax year, you'll need to update your employees' tax codes and then, if applicable, claim employment allowance for 2021 to 22 and set up small employers relief if that applies to you. So now we've been through getting ready for the new tax year, it's time for me to hand over to Tom, who will be taking you through what else is new in 2021 to 22. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Duncan. I'm going to take you through now what's new for 2021-22, starting with some legislation updates. As Duncan mentioned, you can use your software to increase all L codes by 7 and to remove week 1, month 1 flags. For national insurance, the lower earnings limit remains the same. However, the primary threshold has increased to £184, the secondary threshold has increased to £170, and the upper earnings limit has increased to £967. From the 1st of April 2021, the maximum amount of national minimum wage and national living wage is £8.91, and that is for ages 23 plus. Now that is a change, as in prior years that rate has been applicable for people aged 25 and above, but it's now applicable for ages 23 and above. For student loans, Plan 4 has been introduced for Scottish student loans, which will deduct at 9% on earnings over £25,000. The standard rate of statutory sick pay for the year is £96.35, and the standard rate of statutory parental pay is at £151.97, and the figure for auto enrolment triggers remains at £10,000. On the 3rd of March 2021, Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced that the coronavirus job retention scheme would be extended beyond the proposed end date of the 30th of June 2021 and instead continue until the 30th of September 2021. The UK government will continue to pay 80% of employee wages for hours that they can't work until June, with employers contributing 10% in July and 20% in August and September. We will be working through all of the changes and impacts of the budget announcement and will continue to update and inform all of our Sage customers of these changes as they happen. There's a link on screen and also available on the handout from these slides to read more about these changes on the gov.uk website. And lastly, a change to how you make corrections in your previous tax years. In previous versions of our software, to make a correction in a previous tax year, it was necessary to submit an EYU, so an earlier year update. The EYU is no longer applicable from tax year 2019-20, and an FPS should be used instead. To deal with this easily in the software, we're replacing the EYU option. With the new update from the eSubmission stack, you'll find the option of amend a previous tax year, which you can see on the right. This option will decide to use an EYU or an FPS dynamically, depending on the year being corrected. So that's everything from me. I'm going to hand you back over to Duncan, who will take you through some further support that's available to you.
Thanks, Tom. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes now to show you how to access our excellent payroll year-end support resources. So I'll start with our dedicated payroll year-end help centre, which you'll find at www.sage.co.uk/PYE. Simply choose your software, in this case Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, and you'll then find everything you need to support you with payroll year-end. You can sign up for our other webinar from here, and you'll also be able to download the year-end update once it's available. You'll also find information on each stage of the year-end process, from preparing and processing your year-end, right through to getting ready for the new tax year and the legislation changes. You can access handy guides and checklists, and there's a link to our Q&A live sessions where you can get quick answers to your questions from a Sage expert Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Once you've installed the latest update, you can also find these resources from the web links menu in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll. I'd also like to mention some of the training we have available at Sage U. So you can complete our payroll e-learning courses and Sage certification completely free of charge. All you need to do is sign up at sageu.com and then find your way through to the Sage 50 Cloud Payroll learning path. So do check that out. It's a great learning resource, particularly if you're new to the software. On behalf of Tom and myself, thanks so much for your time today. We hope you found the webinar useful. Stay safe, and we do look forward to seeing you at another webinar soon.